What's up, guys? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and lore. Today we've got an interesting one. We have a story about an alien who was shot and killed at a military base. This is a claim that an Air Force major made. The article is brought to us by app.com, and it discusses an alien who was shot down in the Pine Barrens area of New Jersey. So, this story reportedly takes place at Fort Dix. It's a joint base, so there's multiple bases on site for multiple military applications and branches. So there's Fort Dix, McGuire, and Lakehurst. So this event took place at Fort Dix, and it was on the early morning hours of January 18th, 1978. So, in a book that was published by John Guerrera, a major in the Air Force states that this alien was shot and killed. The Air Force major, his name is George Filer III. Many of you know him. He's been in UFO circles for quite a long time. He's in his upper 80s now, still kicking it. And he states that in the freezing winter darkness, a bipedal creature who was about 4 feet in height, grayish-brown in color, with a fat head and long arms and slender body, was shot to death with 5 rounds fired from a .45 caliber service member's handgun. So the military issue is M1911A1. So those are the pistols that they carried. And Guerrera states in his book that the soldier had originally been in a police pickup truck driving through the wilderness of the base in pursuit of a low-flying aircraft that had been observed through military installations airspace about 2 a.m. that morning. And it seems to be pretty consistent with a lot of UFO sightings where they take place in early morning hours. They know that everybody's asleep or that there's low traffic, low folks outside. Good time to be coming down and abducting folks or doing whatever they're going to do in their mission. He states about an hour into the drive, the soldier became aware, in typical horror movie fashion, that the craft was oval-shaped and radiating a green-blue glow and was hovering directly over his vehicle. Now, that's going to be terrifying for anybody. That's when the creature emerged from the shadows on foot, revealing itself to the soldier by stepping into the beams of the vehicle's headlights. Man, this is like a horror movie. Where the MP panicked, drew his weapon, and ordered the alien to freeze, and then he fired. So, it's unfortunate, but, I guess, if it's true, we were able to capture an alien and kind of be able to study it. I'm not advocating to shoot, an alien, but, these things happen where it's a military situation. I mean, what would you do? You're thinking you're in fear of your life. You have a UFO over your head, and then you have an alien in front of you. All the movies, right, tell us to be afraid for our lives. So, this is probably what would happen. So, according to the book, the alien succumbed to its gunshot wounds, and the Air Force took over and picked up its remains, which was giving off a foul-smelling ammonia-like stench, which is interesting. So, it seems like they're kind of comprised of a different chemistry. You'd think like all carbon-based animals would kind of be created the same, similar chemistry. Of course, we're going to have different DNA, but a similar chemistry. You might, kill a bear. You might kill, a cow or something, but it's not going to give off an ammonia-like stench, which is why I think that, might have some sort of different chemistry. Who knows? That might be its normal body odor, but if it was giving off such a strong stench, maybe it was giving it off from the gunshot wound. So later that morning, a cleanup crew from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, headquarters at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, flew in to retrieve the body, behaving as if the creature was not entirely alien to them. So Filer stated that during his most recent serving on the state director board for MUFON, that he never actually saw the dead alien. However, he states that he knows for a fact that the story is true. It should be noted that Filer has claimed to see UFOs throughout his entire life, starting when he was about 5 years old in his boyhood home of Illinois. So, yeah, like I said, Filer's been in the ufology world for quite some time now. So, on that morning, Filer stated he arrived at the base before dawn to prepare his daily 8 a.m. intelligence briefing for superior officers. In the book, he explains that when he arrived, security at the base had tightened and he personally observed the emergency response in the aftermath of the incident. He also said that he interviewed some of the witnesses on the scene for a report that on what happened that he was required to file. So he wasn't snooping around trying to get some information outside of his security clearance. He was actually getting it because of his security clearance and because of his job duties. And he stated that he was denied access to and was never cleared to see photos that were taken of the scene. So he was able to interview some witnesses, but he was never able to get a picture of the scene. So that's how he knows for a fact the story is true. He was there interviewing witnesses. The senior master sergeant runs everything, he states, from who sweeps the floor to organizing the staff schedules and making sure phones and faxes are up and running. He was agitated, his face was pale, and his eyes were wide open. Then he said the strangest thing. An alien has been shot at Fort Dix, and they found it on the end of our runway, which was McGuire Air Force Base runway. Was it an alien from another country? He asked his superior officer. No, it was from outer space, a space alien. There are UFOs buzzing around the pattern like mad, which is interesting. So I wonder if these UFOs were coming to try to retrieve this creature, and they saw it in the air. I mean, talk about an interstellar incident, not an international incident, but an interstellar incident. It becomes quite scary, especially since it seems as though we can't fight these guys. Even though if they land, I guess we can shoot them, but in an air battle, it's just not going to happen most likely. Later, the Air Force classified everything as top secret and silenced the witnesses through national security restrictions and good old-fashioned intimidation. Everyone except for Filer. So, Filer has publicly spoken about the 1978 incident before the incident itself has been the subject of discussion in the early 1980s. So the details about it have been reported in many papers, including the Trentonian on July 10th, 2007. They reported that 12 years ago, the Air Force repeatedly denied the claim, telling the newspaper the case was discredited as a hoax years ago. So, this is it's a very interesting story. What's interesting also is that on January 18, 1978, the same day, a movie about gray aliens with fat heads, long arms, slender bodies came out amidst a government cover-up, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Very interesting. And it was still playing in local movie theaters 2 months after its release date. So even the tagline for the movie stated, "We are not alone," right? One of the most spectacular movies ever made. They have an actual newspaper clipping here of the movie from the Mall Cinema 3 on Brick Boulevard in Bricktown. Doesn't say what state, but yeah, it's interesting. It gives its phone number too and everything. It's pretty cool. But anyway, that's just a press clipping of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But interestingly enough, the movie came out the same day that the government was covering up an actual alien incident. So if you've heard about this story, what do you think? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's true? There have been a few stories where military veterans, government contractors have engaged in battles with aliens. Whatever type of alien it is, whether it's like a tall white or whether it's a grayish brown alien. there's been multiple battles, there have been multiple gun battles with these creatures, some where humans have sustained injuries or death, and some where the aliens sustained injury or death. So, what do you think? There's a few interesting pieces of information here. Obviously, the aliens don't have some sort of like enough technology anyway. They have a shield or a barrier between them and the Earth. You would think with the technology to fly across galaxies or solar systems, you'd have the technology to have like some sort of like see-through translucent barrier so that you didn't get shot by a primitive gun by humans, but they don't have that technology. I mean, there's been multiple reports where they've been shot, so that's really interesting to me. I would think that they would have that. At least for humans, we have to have a helmet on our head with oxygen. It seems like any of these encounters with aliens, they're able to walk around without a helmet on. Um, that would seem to be pretty dangerous considering they could contract a bacteria or virus that they're not immune to on Earth, um, or get shot or maimed or injured. Not even by humans, but like by a bear or an animal in the woods or something like that, a mountain lion. They should have that technology, I would think. What do you think? Um, so the other thing is, according to this report, we captured him. Obviously we studied him. And what did we find? Who knows? Um, it doesn't seem like they carry a lot of technology on them. Most of the technology is within the ship itself as a transport vehicle. Rarely do we hear about any weaponized technology on these ships, that they're kind of like scout ships. I'm sure like the motherships probably have some sort of technology to protect them. Um, but it seems like we've recovered a lot of these crash ships as well. Dating all the way back to Roswell, all the way up to current day. There's been many reports since Roswell about captured ships, and we've captured them and studied them, and they've been brought to Area 51, S2, and other places to study. And government whistleblowers have talked about that, and they've talked about the technology on board. I've talked about that in previous podcasts. So, what do you think? How many have we captured? How many aliens have we, unfortunately, on purpose, and have been captured? My guess would be probably, from crash ships and from purposeful, shootings. From what I've read, probably 50, maybe more. Could be a lot more. I mean, and this is just in the U.S. We don't know about the rest of the world. Um, so, it's interesting to review these subjects and these topics and kind of put a number on it. How many stories have you read about um, alien encounters where they've been killed, where they've been captured, where the ship has been captured, retrievals and all that? And if you put it in perspective, right, what have you heard versus what are the potential stories out there? It's like putting the Hubble telescope and pointing it at a small spot in space and then looking deep into space and seeing all of the galaxies that are out there. And we're only looking at a small portion of space. We'll extrapolate that into the alien ufology world and say, how many stories have we heard versus how many stories are actually out there? How many stories have we read versus how many stories aren't even published? And that really starts to put things in perspective. So think about that as you move forward and read stories and become educated in the UFO world. There's much more that has happened that hasn't been written about. And many of these stories, luckily enough, we've been given by UFO whistleblowers, by government whistleblowers, military veterans, and so forth. And they deserve our respect, and they deserve counseling and all the resources to make their life somewhat manageable. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully you guys are taking care of yourselves, your physical health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, taking care of your, or following through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. Do something artful every day. Do something, with your hands every day. If you don't do arts, fix up your car. I don't know, make a cake. Do something special. I like cake, sorry. And, do something for yourself or maybe for somebody else. That'll make you feel good too. We got to keep ourselves positive and uplifted during these times. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. It's a big universe out there, and we have a lot of questions. So take care of yourselves, guys, and Lockdown Universe out.